Hey everyone, Kelly here. Welcome to Kelly's Art Throb. I'm going to share today a sketchbook that I'm working in, and I've made a sort of a study workbook of it. And it's formatted the same way as the sketchbook that I made in my last video. And there's a link to that in the description if you're interested. But when I was a kid, I could get lost in the geometric patterns and the arabesques and the rich jewel colors of my grandmother's Persian rug. And I decided it was high time that I made a study of it. But regardless of what kind of art you want to learn about, you can use this video as a guide on how to make a study. Or you can just watch because you enjoy watching relaxing sketchbook videos. At any rate, all the supplies and links will be in the description, and let's just dive in. I'll show you what I've done so far. This is the first one, and I decided watercolor was a little too transparent, so from here on I'm using gouache. On the second page I had used shell gold but for the last two I used creme or star gold. We're going to start on the fifth page today, and I'm going to continue using this Islamic floral patterns coloring book that I got off of Amazon. I've already chosen the design, and I've made a photocopy of it, slightly reduced size, and taped some tracing paper to it. We're going to trace the line art onto the tracing paper. Tracing is a really important skill to have, and anytime you're going to repeat patterns or you want to be really precise in doing any kind of decorative art or maybe folk art, you have to be able to be very patient and focus and trace the pattern as faithfully as you can, because that's what you're going to transfer to make your final work. Now that we have the image traced onto the tracing paper, it's time to transfer the image onto the page. I've turned the tracing paper over, graphite side down, and taped it to the page. And now it's time to take a bone folder and rub over the image, and that will transfer the graphite onto the page. Be patient. This takes time, and it's necessary to look underneath and make sure that the graphite is transferring evenly. There are other ways to transfer an image onto your paper. You can use graphite transfer paper, or you could do what I did here, and instead of rubbing all over the entire image, you could take a pen and retrace over the image. And actually, I kind of wish I had done that. I think it would have saved me some time. You can try it for yourself, however you want to try it. I think that rubbing this tracing paper caused it to stretch a little bit, and it made it difficult to get a really accurate tracing transfer. It would have been better if I had just traced over it with a pencil or a pen on top of the back side of the tracing paper, because in the end I had to retrace on the page because the graphite didn't transfer quite as clearly as I would like to, and this is very detailed. In a lot of my stuff that I do, it doesn't have to be this precise, but this time it really needs to be for this kind of work. So if I'm going to do it on a finished piece of art, I probably would lay it on a light table, and I would trace over it on my good paper with a very pale ink. That's the benefit of doing sketchbook studies. You get better at it and you learn what to do and what not to do. It's time for some fun. We're going to paint the leaves and vines in gold. I've used Schmincke Aqua Bronze and mixed silver and rich gold together to make a beautiful moon gold. Now that all the gold has been laid down, we're going to burnish it, and that makes it flatter and makes it easier to outline later on. So with the Schmincke Aqua Bronze, it's best to put a piece of tracing paper down and burnish on top of the tracing paper. A lot of the gold that I use, I don't need to do that, but with the Schmincke Aqua Bronze, what I've found is that it will smear a little bit when you burnish it without tracing paper on top. Now that I've got the gold burnished, I'm going to paint the flowers with some gouache. And the gouache I'm using is Utrecht. And I found it on sale at Blick one day when I was there, and I was just going to get a couple of tubes of titanium white because I go through that so quickly when I paint with gouache. And the clerk told me that all of the Utrecht gouache was really, really good. And so I got some in several colors. I got ultramarine blue, turquoise. I ended up getting pretty much a solid palette out of it. And I've got to tell you, for less than a third of what I paid for the Holbein or the Winsor & Newton gouache, it's just as good and a lot cheaper. Now, I can't speak to the light fastness. I've never done my own light fast tests on any of this, but I think it's every bit as good. I mean, they're using the same pigments, and I think it's pretty good stuff. I really like working with it, and I really like working with hemi gouache, but I know it's not as good. It's not as opaque. But what I missed, I don't like working out of tubes. I don't like squirting gouache onto a palette. I just feel like I waste so much of it. So I started putting them in these little pots. You guys have seen them. They're the kind of pots that they put kids' acrylic in and stuff in those kits. Well, they work great for gouache. So you can squirt your tubes into those, and especially when you're going to work right out of the pan and you're not going to mix it, you just don't waste any gouache. So it's pretty awesome. Anyway, right now I'm adding kind of a base color to the floral pieces, the little flowers. I'm using a really tiny brush. I think it's a 000. And for gouache, I don't use natural fiber brushes. I use like a Taklon. And just make sure it has a nice point. For this, you don't actually have to use very expensive brushes to get a good result. I ended up with quite a bit of gouache left over from painting the pink flowers, so I put them in a smaller little container, and I'm going to spray it with some water, and it should keep until this project is over for sure. I want some blue flowers too, so I'm going to mix a little bit of white and ultramarine blue, and I'm going to mix it right on top of that pink to give it a, to kind of integrate it into that color and make it a pinkier, more of a periwinkle blue. And one thing with gouache that is very different than watercolor, it dries darker. You know how watercolor generally dries lighter? Gouache is a lot like acrylic. The shift is darker. So however light you want it, make it about 3 times lighter. This little soap dish was a find from Dollar General, and it just goes to show you don't have to spend a fortune on palettes. I like to have different palettes for different uses, and this one is just the perfect size for gouache and these little studies. It doesn't have any compartments. It's just one little dish, and that works well for this. It's much easier to clean, and like for instance here I'm going to be doing some blending, and so I've got all the colors kind of together that I'm going to use to blend, and it makes it very convenient. Anyway, I just wanted to let you know you don't have to spend a fortune on every kind of palette you can find. Sometimes the dollar store or your local thrift store, there's usually white china that you can use for this. Now it's time for a little detail in the petals. I'm keeping it very simple for this study, and I'm keeping it to pink flowers with sort of this periwinkle violet blue detail. Here I'm going to put some darker pink around these outside blooms, and these petals I'm going to blend them, and I've blended with gouache before but never usually this small. This is really interesting, but I love the fact that I can just put a line around and then put a little bit of just a little damp in my brush, and I can make it look blended and nice. Obviously I still need a little bit more practice, but that's what this is all about. Now I'm going to outline all the leaves and flowers with ink before painting the background. I'm going to use a waterproof ink, my favorite platinum carbon black ink, and at first I tried it with a brush, a Chinese calligraphy brush that makes very fine lines. But what I feel is that the lines are just a little bit too thick. Maybe I need an even tinier brush, and it was just really hard to put little enough pressure to make sure that the line was really, really tiny. I decided to switch to a dip pen with a very fine nib, and I think that it does make a difference. When you're talking about this kind of details matter. How thick the line is, it's important. Fortunately, the outside lines are going to blend in with the background, but where I have gone in to outline the details of the flowers and the leaves and the stems, if there's any detail on the inside where it's gold, I don't want that to be thick. I want it to be nice and delicate. So the dip pen was a better choice. I do think I need a lot more practice with it, but again, that's what this is for. Better to do it in the sketchbook than on a finished piece of art. Now for the fun part. We're getting close to the end because it's time to paint the background. I'm going to keep it simple again. I'm going to use two colors, and right now I'm starting with ultramarine blue right out of the pot. It's kind of tricky to get the exact consistency because too much water and you lose the opacity. Not enough water and it doesn't flow very easily. It always seems to me that at first, when I'm first using a color, it takes a little while to get that balance, but after I've done a few sections of it, then it usually gets faster and pretty easy. I'm ready to add the contrast background color, and I've chosen this beautiful sort of a sky blue. I think we need to add a little bit more contrast, so I'm going to go back to the ultramarine blue. Thank you for coming on this journey with me today, and I hope to see you again in the next video. In the meantime, take care, enjoy the holidays if I don't see you between now and the new year. Thanks for watching, you guys. Smooches, bye.